What's up guys, and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today I'm going to be showing you how to flip samples on the Roland MC-101. I'm going to show you the process, I'm going to show you some beats that I've been working on, and a bunch of tricks and hacks for making your sample chopping process easy and making the result sound quite good. Some of these tips I will be adapting from Jeremy Blake's fantastic video on flipping samples on the Roland MC-707, and others will be stuff that I figured out either from the manual or just from tinkering around with the device. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the 101. Here is the first one, and I'm just going to play this live here. So that is how that one goes. So here are the chops. And so I'm actually going to show you how to do this from scratch. So the first thing you want to do is just load up a basic drum track, and I've gone ahead and gone on Splice Sounds, not a sponsor, and downloaded some kind of royalty-free music loops, essentially. I'm not a huge fan of using melodic loops to just use as is, but I am perfectly happy to take them and chop it up and basically use it as a guaranteed royalty-free version of crate digging. So the first thing you want to do is load them onto your SD card. I've put a Z at the beginning of the file names for melodic loops so that they all get sent to the bottom, and I can scroll through them and get to them that way. So once you've done that, hit Shift, hit the pad that you want to get to, go to Wave File, and I'm going to go all the way to the end here where the Z stuff is, and I can audition this by holding down sound. There's my sample. So I'm going to let that import, and also note that I've already got a drum track going, and I'll play that by itself in a second real quick so you can hear that. So this is the drum track. Pretty simple, kind of a mix of custom and built-in drums. So now I've got the sample in here. And I'm going to turn that down because that's, as it is, just going to ring out forever, which is not what I want. So I want to address that first. So I'm going to exit out of all this. I'm going to hit Shift Sound to modify the sound on this pad. And I'm going to go into, where is it? Envelope mode, and change it to sustain. So now it only plays as long as I hold it down. And to make it so that I don't have these gaps between sounds. I mean, sometimes you might want that. In this case, I do not want that. So what I'm going to do is go over to Release Offset and turn that way up. And pro tip, you're going to see this again in a second. If you hold down Shift and turn this knob, it goes by higher values, in this case, values of 10, which can really speed up digging through parameters like this. So now it'll ring out a little bit. So if I want to do something like this, there's really no gap between hits because it rings out a bit, which is super nice. So that's the method I've used for all three of these samples. And then also while I'm on this pad, what I'm going to do is send it to mute group 1 or whatever mute group you want. The reason that I'm doing that is so samples will cut off each other. And if everything is sent to the same mute group, all of the pads will cut each other off. So like this. That way nothing bleeds together and clashes. So I can do the same for the next pad. Unfortunately, as far as I know, I did some digging through the manual. It looks like you do have to do it on a pad by pad basis, which is kind of annoying, but you can make it work. And once you get into the flow of importing and chopping up a sample, it's not too bad. So I've set this to sustain. I'll go to the Release Offset, turn that way up. And so now I've got two identical samples, so I can start to chop now. So I'm going to go back to Shift to select this pad, go all the way to the end to Sample Edit. This is what will allow me to start to modify it. So I can go to Start or End and change the start and end point of each of these little chops. So once again, in this case, holding down Shift is really helpful and can start really moving you forward in the sample. So and you can then fine tune it by not holding down Shift to really nail down the timing. That's probably not going to fit into this pattern that I've got, but hopefully you at least get the idea. So I've just gone and done this for a few different sections, just kind of scrolling around, trying to find cool little areas for chops, and then fine-tuning them, and then I can actually play that. And that's the basics of how to pull off a sample chop on the Roland MC-101. It may seem slightly clunky, but once you get used to it, it's actually pretty fast. And because you can do it on the SD card, like bring in samples on the SD card, importing them is super friggin' quick. So I'm gonna load up one more beat that I want to show you. This one's a little more kind of in the trap end of things. Let me walk you through that. So the loop I'm starting with is a pretty simple melodic loop. And once again, I want to chop that up to create something entirely new from it. So these are the chops that I've got. And I've chopped them up at kind of weird spots to give a bit of a more interesting pattern, so. And once again, I've done the same trick of letting these ring out a bit and sending these to the same mute group to cut each other off. So let me play these drums and change the clip. Also note that I have gone to Shift, Scatter, go all the way to the end here, to Setting, to set the position to track 3. So the scatter stuff only affects the sample track. So I can do that little tape stop effect, and I've also changed the split and the scale so that that tape stop comes in really slowly, which is super nice. So I'm gonna exit out of that. Real quick, I'll walk you through the drums while I'm at it. So we've got a kick, a clap, and a fairly abrasive snare. This little percussion, a couple of hats that are kind of panned, and then this percussion and this snare are also kind of panned, so you get a bit of width and interest in these drums. And also for those of you who are curious, the way to get that hi-hat roll, go into sequence and hold down sequence and then select this note, and it'll give a different hi-hat roll. That's none right there. And that's what that's set to in this case. And finally, I do want to mention this little track. I'm going to keep it quiet because it's kind of harsh. This one's fun because it's a random patch. So to do that, you go to Browser, go all the way to or near the end, hit Random, and then you can choose the type. I don't want to mess it up, but presumably this is a randomly generated patch, and I think they just have some parameters in place to keep it sounding fairly reasonable. And finally, since you're still here, let me show you one more beat, and it's worth noting on this. I've got these kicks sent to a mute group as well. So this is a kick and an 808 in one sample. So these are sent to their own mute group, so they cut each other off. So then I can use the extra tracks for other elements. Put together using pretty much the exact same techniques that I've showed throughout this video. All right, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see another video about making hip hop on the Roland MC-101, you can click or tap up over here. And if you'd like to see more videos about chopping and flipping samples, you can click or tap down over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.